We see the fist pump, and there's your national champion.
Yeah, and Mario just says, I can't play around
He has
this.
it. There it
Michael
is.
has the pummel, and he is the Pro Tour champion.
Pitches activate Storm Striders. Here's our Ice Bolt in hand. Metacarpus Node activates again, and he gets the fist bump, and Michael Hamilton is the world champion of Flesh and...
It's no secret that Flesh and Blood decks can be on the expensive side. In an Eternal format game, these cards can be seen as a competitive investment. Perhaps justifiably, the best, most powerful cards in the game that can be played by any hero forever have tended to fetch a high price. And while those game pieces serve to elevate your competitive prowess, a simple question hovers in the minds of new and experienced players alike. What is the least costly deck in Classic Constructed that can still win tournaments? This is the story of how I found the cheapest winning deck in Classic Constructed. To understand why decks can be so expensive in Flesh and Blood, it helps to know what the expensive cards are and why they are valued as such. Normally, most of the expense of a card comes because that card is either hard to get or that card is incredibly flexible or powerful, and most of the time we find that those cards are generics. For example, Command and Conquer here is a generic 6 attack that can attack your opponent's arsenal and remove their ability to play 5-card hands. It has a unique function to also pop Phantasm attacks and can block 3 in a pinch. We also look at things like Art of War, which have had flexible play lines in a lot of different heroes and a lot of different styles, as well as big fabled plays and fabled cards that really enable certain classes. And these cards are the hardest to find and fit in niche, unique functions for certain heroes. And that leads us to the most expensive pieces of them all, and that are generic equipment. These cards can be played by any class in the game for the entire life of the game. These cards are generally not going to see bans or rotations out, and they are flexible for anybody to play and pick up, but that makes them incredibly pricey. This one being perhaps the most so, Fyendal's Spring Tunic, which has seen multiple reprints. But then you also have cards like Crown of Providence that came out recently and just do more than any of the other cards in that slot. This is a head equipment, and it really just outclasses a lot of the head equipments in the game currently. And of course, you can look at the prices of class-specific legendary equipments, and some of them are cheaper, and then some of them maybe not so much. But understanding that most of the cost of a deck falls in the 2 to 3x copies of something like Command and Conquer, and then the lion's share of the price being a either class-specific or generic legendary piece of equipment, that allows us to go and find a class that doesn't have to worry about any of this. And what class avoids all of these types of cards? Well, Mechanologist does. Dash is an interesting hero because she very much doesn't care about generics and actively wants to avoid playing them. If you're new to the game, she is all about boosting attacks and gaining action points and playing items, and everything she really wants to do is sort of contingent upon those things being Mechanologist cards. If you successfully boost a Mechanologist card, then you are able to gain go again on those attacks. And of course, you can also play into the standard play line of Plasma Pistol with these induction chambers to play a more defensive mindset game, a more defensive archetype. And this hero and this class very much currently wants to avoid playing a lot of generics and doesn't really make use of non-class specific legendaries. For example, Teklo Foundry Heart is the de facto choice for chest pieces over something like a Fyendal Spring Tunic, making it a lot easier to build a competitive and also budget-friendly deck for Dash. So if we were to actually go about doing that, how would we construct the deck? So here in Fabrary, we're going to build the deck together. And in doing so, I'm going to explain why this is so budget friendly and what the plan of attack with the deck is. So let's just include the attacks first. So we're going to include Combustible Couriers. This is a great card that produces one of our only on hits in the deck, but allows us to boost and attack for 4 with Go Again. And we are going to basically guarantee that we can go again with this deck. We're also going to include 2 red high speed impacts, which is another nice little boost with sort of an on-hit effect. Then we're going to include, while we're here, I might as well just chuck in these High Octanes. High Octane allows us to really get crazy with our action points and shoot our pistol multiple times because we're going to be boosting a lot. So if we start with High Octane, every time we boost, we gain an action point. If we have the leftover resources, we can keep loading our pistol and shooting it because the pistol that we're going to run does not take an action point to, or does not take is not a once per turn effect. Because the pistol that we use is not a once per turn effect. The Tekla Plasma pistol can be used as many times as you want. It says action pay 1, which is really, really nice. So from this point, we are also going to include 3 maximum velocities. We are going to come down here, go over to this tab here. We are going to find everybody's favorite little Pulse Wave Harpoon card. It's a great little card that was added recently. This is not an on-hit effect. This is just when you attack with it, and it pulls cards from your opponent's hand, allowing you to play very aggressively. We'll also include 3 red T-Bones to do the same thing when you play this. If you've boosted with either this attack or a previous attack, you can just go and grab an equipment from your opponent, try to make it hard for them to block. Then we've got our good throttles, which is just a solid 2 for 6 that we could boost. And then our classic kind of 3 attacks here. We have 0 to 60, which is just the auto include and zipper hit. And for both of those cards, we're going to run them in all colors. So let's just make that easy by going 0 to 60 and just include them all the way. And zipper hit as well. We're going to include those all the way as well. Now, adding in a couple of extra blues, I think it really pays to include, as we go here, bounce there, really pays to include some more of these Combustible Couriers in blue. Those things can be solid. Plus, we also need the resources at times to pitch. And then we go and grab a couple T-Bones because T-Bone basically just allows us to attack with it if we want to and steal opponents' equipment. Plus, if we have 6 T-Bones, and we chain those T-Bones together, at least a couple on a specific turn, we can push massive, disruption on our opponent's equipment stash, if you will. Now, let's go into a couple of the equipment, or sorry, I should say item choices. First of all, I do like this BIOS update, so we'll throw 2 of those in there. Every card we've added, by the way, so far is like really cheap. It's incredibly cheap. All of these are aggressively so. So let's take a look at the pricing, and you can see that for yourself. So far, the most expensive card that we've added is literally Pulse Wave Harpoon. Why? Well, because it's a Majestic that does a ton of work. And then tied with that, High Octane, also a Majestic that has done a ton of work, which is good for us because if you're looking at the pricing there, this is I don't know if you can see that on top there, but this is a $40. Oh, you can't see anything. Well, that's unfortunate. There, that's better. It's a little easier to see the price currently sitting at $40. Okay, so continuing on with the list, let's continue to include our items. We're going to include 3 induction chambers. We will include, let's go over to, where's our Tekla Pounder? It's a blue. Actually, while we're here, we want to include these plasma purifiers. These are both great. So induction chamber allows us to shoot with our pistol more than once. If we can give it Go Again, gain an action point, basically. Plasma purifier just lets it deal more damage. So we can play defensively if we choose into specific matchups, or we could, kind of side those out and not play so aggressively if we wanted to. Not play so defensively and play more aggressively if we wanted to. We also really want Spark of Genius. Spark of Genius is fantastic, and I know there's some people that will include yellow T-Bone in attacks. You could do that as well if you wanted to go the more aggressive slant. And then let's go ahead and, of course, grab Tekla Cores Blues and Tekla Pounder Blues, and this allows us to put together what we would look at as a 61 card deck here. If we wanted to, we could just pop like one of these items in the sideboard, and you could build a 60 card deck like this. But I won't leave you hanging there. Let's also include a sideboard, which will make for a nice little time. If you wanted to, also, you could consider these BIOS updates sideboards as well. You just pop that back in there, or if you wanted to just completely, you could remove these into the sideboard and just side them in for when you're playing a more controlling matchup from your perspective. Now, then we dive into one of the only sets of defense reactions and generics that we include, and this is a really popular one, Sink Below. Sink Belows. Let's pop 3 of those in there, and we'll put them straight into the sideboard, actually. In doing so, this allows us to pivot into a defensive shell, if you will, and along with that, we can do Unmovable. Unmovables in the sideboard as well as a popular option. When you pivot into this defensive shell, you will not be looking to boost. You'll be looking to set up these items. You'll want to set up Plasma Purifier, Sink Belows for defense, Unmovables for defense. You want to set up the induction chambers. You want to block efficiently, and you want to play to an end game where you just shoot your pistol a whole heck of a lot. And then finally, let's go ahead and include these Reinforce the Lines. These are great. That kind of snuck in not too long ago, I guess about a year ago or so. People started playing Reinforce the Line to dance around some like dominate effects. This was an interesting card when it first came out. People weren't too excited about it, but then it got a lot better over time. And this makes great use into this deck where we want to play around like defense, this very defensive strategy, play around like big offensive plays or disruptive plays. If we come against a CNC and we want to keep our arsenal and our life total, and we can't play these things from arsenal, well, we can block with 1 card and then reinforce the line if we wanted to, which is quite nice indeed. And then finally, let's see if we can round this deck out as we want to include our equipment and things like that. And this, again, is where it falls back to playing more, generic equipment is sort of unnecessary. Now, overall, as we include these pieces of equipment, this will really inform the price of the deck, because as you see, the deck currently is sitting at $90. So if we include something like a Crown of Providence, that is going to shoot up a good bit to $310, which is still cheap by a lot of standards for competitive Flesh and Blood, but we aren't going to include that card. If you want to, that is the card that is in tournament winning deck lists, but instead we are going to include a nice little secondary option. So why are we including Hope Merchant's Hood in this? Well, what does Crown of Providence do? It blocks 2, and it allows us to cycle a card from our arsenal or from our hand to set up a nice little 5-card hand. This almost does the same thing. It almost does the same thing. And so we're going to include it because it almost does the same thing. And also it's like 28 cents. So we're going to include it. And so it, in some ways it does a similar thing where you can cycle. Now you can't cycle the arsenal, and it does not block 2. So it's not nearly as good as a $220 card, but it is a fraction of the cost, and it allows us to do something very similar, because this is used in the aggressive shell to block 2 and to set up a big bomb turn when you have perhaps a clunky hand. Also to kind of save your arsenal if it's stranded. We can do something similar with Hope Merchant's Hood, where we can steal away a couple of cards from our hand, bottom them, and draw new cards to hope that we, not really bottom them, shuffle them in, and draw new cards to hopefully fix a hand that is more gas or more power. It does not have the same power level. I'm not telling you that this is the truth and this is what you should be playing. I am simply saying that we could have some utility in there as well. Now, if you wanted to go the half measure and you wanted something that blocks, take Arcanite Skullcap. It's not nearly as expensive. As you can see, it only bumps it up like $60. So if you wanted something that still gives you defensive tools, there you go. Arcanite Skullcap can do that. But let's continue on. We don't have to include Fyendal Spring Tunic, because the best equipment for our chest piece is, where is it? Where is it? Did I miss it? Was it on the first page? No, it's right here. Tekla Foundry Heart. And so we're going to pop that in there. This is going to bump our numbers up by a good bit. This is like a $75 card if you get the white border, but it is 100% necessary. While we're here, let's throw in the pistol. And while we're here, let's also throw in the boots. I think I saw them. Where'd those boots go? Maybe they're on the first page. As we look for the boots, we're also going to find the glove that we're going to use. We're going to use the Goliath Gauntlet, because we are going to play aggressively. This is going to be a very aggressive red line Wombat Dash deck. It is called Wombat Dash. Why? Just just don't ask questions. It just is. I can't find the boots. Where the heck are the boots? Okay, let's include Achilles Accelerator. There they are. I couldn't find them. And then we finally round out the equipment with the model. Visitronic Model I is a little bit of a pricey card, but not terribly. And this is really good if we're trying to play against something that is dealing us arcane damage. We can just pop this on there and just be happy about that. We can also include Null Rune, the Null Rune gloves, and pop those into the sideboard. And that allows us to play AB1, AB2, 3, and then finally AB4 if we wanted to go that route as well. And that leaves us 3 cards to put into the deck. So where can we just steal 3 cards away? Well, you know what? We could just include a couple more blues, like for example, Blue Throttle. Blue Throttle is a solid little card, so it allows us to push 4 damage, and it allows us to, there we go, fill out the rest of the deck. And so with these additions, we have now rounded out the deck. We have 59 cards in the main board, 15 in the sideboard, and of course 6 weapons and equipment to make an 80-80. And this is the time where I tell you this is not my deck. I actually discovered this deck on fabtcg.com. And this was under, if you go to the deck lists section in events and deck lists, you can actually find this list exactly where I found it, under the dash section. And this is actually a tournament winning list. And in fact, this was Sam Sutherland's Calling Auckland win from this February, like from this year. And this basically is his list. And I wanted to point out how cheap this is if you make literally one change. If you take out Crown of Providence and sub in another head equipment, what does this total the deck to? $180. You can build virtually the same calling winning deck list for $180. And if you wanted to, if you had the money, if you decided, you know what, I want to play an aggressive list, well, you could go the half measure and you can chuck in the Arcanite Skullcap, and it's $240. That's not bad for the blocking. But if you wanted to run basically the exact list to some degree, well, you could chuck in the Crown of Providence and it pushes it to a total of $400. And honestly, this is incredibly aggressively cheap for an Eternal format game and an Eternal deck that you could buy, put together, play, get really good at, and never really have to worry about these main expensive quote-unquote pieces rotating around. That's not bad, because then you just change the cheat pieces and you adjust the deck as you go. But even if you didn't want to buy that, you can put this deck together for an aggressively low price. And if you're like, well, okay, that was a one-time thing. Well, Merrick Kemp won, I believe this was the Calling Baltimore win in April. A similar deck list. Now this does include a couple of other cards like Command and Conquer. This has a different overall build, but a lot of these pieces, as you can see, are just very, very similar. Very similar. And yes, we do have a couple of new additions like Remembrance and a couple of Command and Conquers. But if you already have those on hand, or if you decide to change the list, you can win with this style of dash at, a fairly aggressive price point, which is very cool. So if you enjoyed learning about this list and you enjoyed this whole process as we went through, and if you liked that intro, shout out to all of the speed running people that watch speed running documentaries like I do on YouTube. You're welcome for that intro. If you enjoy this, make a number go slightly higher, because I enjoyed making it and I probably spent too long on it. But if you didn't enjoy it, let me know why in a comment below. And if you think that this list is totally copium, tell me why in a comment below as well. But I think this is really cool, and this is a fun, very cheap, very easy to pick up deck list overall. Before I go, I should say I just started up channel memberships. If you would like to get exclusive emotes, DM Armada emotes, just go down into the join member section right down there next to the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button while you're there and join as a member for 99 cents. You can emote all over the place. You can emote down there, over here, up there, down here. You can emote all over the place with hilarious little emotes. So if you want to do that, feel free to join. And as always, thanks for watching.